Hi, this is video number 25. The last time I signed off, I said maybe I would come back over the weekend and talk to you a little bit. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to talk about, but last evening, for some reason, I was looking at the date to see what date it was. It was January 15th, and I thought tomorrow's January 16th, it's the anniversary of the day that I went in to the psych hospital because I was suicidal. And it just so happens that today is Saturday, January 16th. And the last time that it was Saturday, January 16th was 6 years ago, 2010. And so I thought what I might like to do is read a little bit from my book. My book starts out on Saturday, January 16, 2010. It was the morning that I was here at home. I actually was in this very room. I was sitting over where our computer was at the time. This room is very different now. We remodeled it and so forth. But I was sitting at my computer over there, and I was feeling really very bad. I had just gotten an email from somebody. I was describing to them how bad I felt and what was going on, and I told them I was taking 4 milligrams of Klonopin at the time. And she wrote back right away and said, "That's what's the problem. You have to get off of this." And I completely freaked out because I didn't know how to get off of it. And I thought, I have no hope. In my entire journey, that probably was the day I felt the absolute most hopeless. There was no hope in me. So what I would like to do is read from my book. It starts out that particular morning. The book has two parts. There's part one, which is, it starts out that morning. It goes through the time, the first night that I was in the psych hospital, and then the next morning. But during that time, I had like flashbacks of things that had happened to me in my life, all the psych meds and different things that had happened to me. And I was like making sense out of my life and trying to figure out how I ended up in I was in a mental institution, how that happened to me, because I had no idea I could ever be in such a place as a resident or patient or whatever they're called. And then part two is, well, part one ends with me. It's the first morning I'm in the psych hospital. That's where it ends. There's a whole lot more to tell about that, but I didn't want to leave the reader with me being in distress and like having no hope. So what I did was, in part two, I wrote it from the perspective of me being healed, looking back on part one. And I would like to read like the last couple pages of part two, the last couple pages of the book, to let you know that, like, yes, I had hope. I was well. The pathetic person that was in part one that I'm going to read about was no longer in existence. I had changed, and I was very much alive and happy and well. So I'll get started here. And it starts out with a conversation of voices that were in my head. Okay, chapter 1, Saturday, January 16, 2010. The bottle. The bottle? Yes, the bottle, upstairs in the sock drawer. But what? Just get it. You have no choice. We have no choice. There must be some other. Do it. You heard what she said. Maybe she meant no. You knew what she meant. It's over. Move. Okay. As he got up from the sofa, he felt like he had just lost the final battle. Or maybe this was the start of something new and supremely better. Maybe it had to be this way so that he could get to the next place, a much nicer place. Yes, it was supposed to be this way. Of course, this was all part of the plan. He had been wrong all along. He shuffled toward the stairs in a daze. Nothing seemed real to him, as though he was in some sort of altered state. He looked at his feet as they approached the first step. Were these his feet? He felt like he wasn't there, almost like he was watching himself from somewhere else. He touched the handrail as his foot contacted the first step. He felt the handrail. He felt a step. He didn't sense any connection to them at all, or to anything or anyone anywhere, not even to himself. He had felt this way for months. Soon it would be a memory. Yes, this had to be done. Would he even have memories after this? What if? Terror gripped every part of his body. Panic attack. He was dizzy, very dizzy. He steadied himself against the hallway wall. Feeling less dizzy, he feebly trudged to the doorway and peered into the bedroom. There was the chest with his sock drawer. He had the strange feeling that it was looking at him as he stood there, beckoning him to come closer. As he contemplated what he was about to do, dread washed over him and consumed him. He turned his head away and closed his eyes. He was confused. He was utterly and completely confused. He had this feeling that he should just surrender, but he had no idea what that even meant, or how he would do it, or to whom he should surrender. So he stood there in the doorway, paralyzed with fear and confusion. "Don't do it, Lee. Don't do it. Just hold on. Don't listen to that dribble. You have to do this. There is no escape. You have tried so hard for so long, and it's just not working for you. It's no use. Come on. It's easy." "Well, yeah, it has been a long time. It only gets worse and worse. Unbearable, really." "That's right. Get the bottle. That's all you have to do." "I can fight this and sink deeper and deeper, or I can just—" Lee shuddered at the stark reality of the thought he could not finish. Those pretty pure white pills. 2 milligrams each. There's plenty in the bottle to end the misery. Just a handful, and this nightmare will be over. You can do it. Hold on, Lee. Hold on. There must be a way. Maybe Dr. Get real, man. He's the one who prescribed those little suckers that have you ready to jump out of your skin. Take them all and get it over with." Lee cringed at the thought of Ruth coming home and finding his lifeless body who knows where. What a horror that would be for her and everyone else. How would she get over it? Could he do something so cruel to someone else? He groveled in the pit of hopeless despair. Why couldn't the walls just cave in and take him far away, somewhere distant from this mental anguish and away from the swirling, confusing voices battling inside his head? "Call Jane. She will tell you what to do. She knows what's wrong." A voice of hope and reason? Lee wasn't so sure of that, but it was an option, and options were non-existent at the moment, as they had been for these last 3 tortuous years, or months rather. But what could Jane tell him that would change anything? She's the one who just emailed him with the news that the pills were sapping the mental and emotional life from him, and would continue to do so until he stopped taking them. Sure, that sounded like hope, but he had also read that withdrawal from them could last as long as 2 years. He could not bear the thought of feeling this way for 2 more years, or 2 more days. It was simply out of the question, completely undoable. He would rather die. Yes, die. Besides, Lee had no idea how to stop the pills. He had read there was a risk of seizures if it wasn't done properly. The pills were killing him. He felt it. He knew it. If he quit taking them, it would no doubt cause him indescribable misery before he would find rest in death. It would be much easier to end it now and hope that peace was on the other side. Lee turned and made his way back into the hallway and hobbled to the stairway again. He shakily descended to the living room, where he sat on the edge of the sofa as though he must hurry and do something. But what? He ran the options through his mind for the millionth time. He couldn't keep taking the pills. He couldn't quit taking the pills. He couldn't live in his current state of total mental anguish. The anxiety, the panic, the depression were slowly devouring him till he could no longer think or muster the slightest bit of hope. Life was completely black and had been that way for 3 months, despite all the different drugs he was prescribed. Now he knew it was the drugs that were causing his torment, but he was permanently wed to them. There could be no divorce, unless— Lee looked over toward the stairs that he had just ascended and descended. He ran the scenario through his head. The thought that this could be the last time he would ever go up those stairs stunned him. How many times had he gone up and down those stairs in 23 years? His mind thought back to when Lynn was a little girl and how he would go up and tuck her in bed each night. He thought about how he would sit on the steps and talk to Michael while he was in the bathroom to keep him from being afraid. He thought about the dent in the drywall where he had smacked his elbow when he slipped on the steps carrying Michael when he was an infant. The thought that the next time he came down those steps he would be in a body bag or wrapped in a sheet was gruesome. All the hopes and dreams of life he had carried during the thousands of other times he came down those steps would be over. How could this be right? Something deep inside Lee spoke. You can't do this. You just cannot do this. It was not one of those incessant, pestering voices from inside his head. It came from somewhere within his very being, a vastly mysterious place. Whatever or whoever it was, it had complete authority. He could not end his life at his own hands. What was he going to do? The voice, or whatever it was, told him what he could not do, but it gave him no clue about what he should do about his unbearable pain. Lee stumbled out to the kitchen and found the address book in the dry sink. With shaking hands, he paged through it and found Jane's name and phone number. What would he say to her? How do you start a conversation with someone when you're trying to tell them you're contemplating suicide? What words do you use? He reached up over the dry sink, took the phone from the wall, and walked into the living room. He sat on the edge of the sofa again, rocking back and forth. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept in days and had lost 30 pounds since this ordeal began because he could not eat. But he had to rock as he sat there. He could not keep still. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. His hopes started fading again. His mind began wandering back to the grotesqueness of his body being carried down the steps. He shuddered. He looked at the phone and, with trembling hands, began to dial Jane's number. He held it to his ear and listened to it ring. He wasn't even certain that he could speak if she did answer. Okay, and I'll stop there. Okay, and then later in the day, I ended up in an ER, in the emergency room, waiting for a bed at a psych hospital for much of the afternoon. And then I went to the psych hospital, and obviously I got better. I didn't do myself in or anything. So I'll go to part 2 here at the end of the end of the book, and this is me. I mean, I wrote both of these. I went through both of these things, but this is me healed. Okay, I'm contemplating all of the things that I had learned from my experience. Now that Lee was well, he was aware of another truth that he had never known prior to his withdrawal experience. He had discovered that there was a divide, something like a chasm, between what we see, hear, and feel, and that which is, our spiritual selves which don't feel or sense in a physical, mental, or emotional way. It had something to do with eternal purpose and meaning and the one who created us. It had something to do with our position to and relationship with not only the Creator, but also with our position to and relationship with each other. Lee had been in a place of absolute agony and indescribable horror caused by a central nervous system that had been severely compromised by psychotropic chemical agents. All sorts of bizarre thoughts, ideas, and perceptions emanated from that state of mind. Yet there had been something inside him that did not falter, did not change, and had been unaffected by the mental and physical anguish. It was something eternal and immutable, something that could not bow to the suffering. It just was, and maybe always had been and always would be. He was certain the mysterious something was actually a someone, the owner of the voice of hope who had spoken to him throughout his withdrawal ordeal. He was equally sure that this same voice of hope spoke to every living being on the planet, sometimes directly, but most often through other individuals. That was why it was now so important for him to try to help others through withdrawal, so they would also hear the voice. It had taken Lee 58 years to learn another deep reality. Human life on Earth is an experience in bipolarity. It must necessarily be so. Everyone will experience difficulty and suffering simply as a result of living life. Similarly, everyone will experience happiness and peace. Life is not static, it is changing constantly. Our perceptions and perspectives must also change continually. Otherwise, we only exist on a flat line without purpose or meaning. We don't experience and feel life. We wait only to die. It is like viewing birth as the beginning of death rather than the beginning of an ongoing adventure fraught with the ups and downs of a continually changing existence. Lee had come to believe that the sense of an ongoing, never-ending adventure is fueled by a hope that has been forged from somewhere in eternity past. It was hope that he had sought, that he had craved moment to moment in his journey through his suffering. It would be that hope that would help him to always look forward and anticipate what awaited him as he traveled through his earthly existence. For now, Lee would set his sights on the near future. He would look forward to sharing at least part of his story and some of the perceptions he had gained from his experience as a player in that story. If, for some reason, that opportunity did not arrive, or if he would get distracted chasing some rabbit down another trail and into its hole, that was fine with him. There were always more rabbits. He had learned to enjoy the adventure. There were many things to share about his experience, but by far the most important one would be addressed to those going through benzodiazepine withdrawal and those imprisoned by alcoholism or any other life-threatening addiction. The most important message was simply that there is hope, much more than one will recognize with only 5 senses. Just as importantly, one doesn't need a huge amount of hope. A small portion will do, just enough to get one through the next minute until the minutes turned into hours, days, weeks, and months. For Lee, hope had been the ever-present miracle that led him to sobriety after 40 years of alcoholism and held his hand through more than 2 years of the gruesome suffering of post-acute withdrawal from both alcohol and clonazepam. Because hope had not abandoned him, he was now alive and living a life he never would have thought possible. If he could do it, anyone could do it. It was a promise. And that's the end of the book. So I guess the message here is there is hope. There is great hope. 6 years ago on this Saturday, in 2010, I was in a very bad way. I was seriously considering ending my life. It was almost the lowest point of my life. When I got out of the hospital, that was pretty low too. That was very, very bad because I was in very acute withdrawal. They had taken me off of 4 milligrams of Klonopin. But the book starts out part 1. I was in a very bad way, but in part 2, I'm looking back and like, yeah, that was all bad stuff in part 1, but I did it. And the way I did it was hope, and that's what you need, and there's plenty of it, believe me. So I will sign off for now. We're at about 18 minutes. I know it's the weekend. I'm hoping you're having some good stuff going on here. I know there's some NFL football on if you're able to watch that. I know when I was in withdrawal, I couldn't do it. I remember when I was in the psych hospital, it was this time of year, and the NFL playoffs were on. I couldn't figure it out. I had watched sports all of my life. It was confusing to me. It was one of the funnier things. I remember the Minnesota Vikings were in the playoffs when I was in the hospital, and I remember watching it, and Brett Favre was the quarterback for Minnesota, and I could not figure that out for the life of me because he had been on the Packers forever, and I thought, how could he possibly be on the Vikings? And then later, as I came out of the fog, I realized he had been traded to the Vikings, like I think a year or so earlier. So that was kind of a strange thing that I do recall from that. And they lost too. I think they lost to the Saints. But anyway, I know it's the weekend. I'm hoping that you got some good things going on. I know that this is hard. This is really hard. I'm hoping that what I read there gives you some hope. Things can go from like as bad as you can imagine to much better than you could ever even believe. So with that, I will sign off here. Hang on, it will get better. You will get through this. I promise. Bye-bye.